I came across an aspect of the teaching which I'm sure that I'd heard about before, and a month or two ago, and I thought that it was. I did give a couple of talks about it, I think, and they're on the website somewhere, but just for you all, there's, and then on the retreat I mentioned another thing that I do, because we like to eat. We like to eat, and really we have to eat, and our attitude to the causes and conditions that are to do with eating are worth considering. And as you may have heard, there are 4 types of nutriment or food that are mentioned, and there are ways of reflecting on them that the Buddha suggested. And there's a way that I talk about it, which is about how it creates a sense of self when we take it personally. And I talk about, on the retreat, I talk about how you look at the food and you think, well, this is for me. And then you think, when you put it on your plate, maybe not so much in Chinese society because you share it all with the thing going around. So, but when it gets onto your chopsticks, then it's definitely mine. And that sense of possession that comes, that requires a sense of somebody who it belongs to. And then when does it become me? And now, when it's at what point does it become me? And then when does it stop being you? These are just ways of reflecting on how we relate to things in terms of for me, mine, and myself. Now food is one of the nutriments. It's the food for the body, and the story behind that, or the story that is told about how to relate to that, is to imagine 3 people, a father, a mother, and a child, and they're walking, and they're in the desert, and they have nothing to eat, and the mother and father decide they have to eat the child. So the mother sends the child to the father to get killed. The father can't do it. The father sends the child to the mother can't do it. And the child goes back and forth between the mother and father until finally the child falls down exhausted and dies. And the parents eat the child. Now, this is the way that the Buddha said one should reflect upon the food that was put into one's body, the physical food. And it's like you're eating your child that's died because you have nothing else to eat. That's pretty heavy, isn't it? It's pretty heavy, but it gives some perspective on this food. You know the phrase for the bhikkhus for reflecting on food: not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with this holy life, because life is, is sacred. Thinking thus, I will allay hunger without overeating, so that I may continue to eat, continue to live blamelessly and at ease. As a reflection on how to consume things. And food is one thing that we consume. And this is something that we do take personally. When we offer food, we think, I'm giving you my food. I'm giving you something that will sustain you. And then, if you give it to the monks, you watch, has he taken my food? Which means that you haven't really given it, because you're still wanting to see what the result is. So just talking about that, but then that's the most obvious thing for food. But then the Buddha talked about 3 other nutriments and the relationship to that. And the next nutriment, again, the imagery is quite graphic. It comes with a sort of health warning, or this is something that might, a trigger warning they call it nowadays, don't they? Something that might trigger something. So the trigger warning is about this one is feeling. Vedana is a type of nutriment because it's something that we feed on. We tend to make something of, and we tend to digest, and we certainly take it personally. The Vedana, the sensation of either going towards or away from something that we experience at the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And this Vedana is described in the graphic terms as being like, you know how tough the skin of a cow is? The cow's skin, how tough it is, how resistant it is. But if you imagine a cow without skin and being fed upon with flies, how excruciatingly agonizing and irritating that would be. That's the description of how Vedana as a nutriment should be considered. The sense of, I like this, I don't like that, I'm not sure about this. And how that all through our day, moment by moment, we're going ding, 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 like a cow that's had without a skin and just being attacked by flies. And that's how we actually sort of jump around, don't we? As we move and like this, don't like that. And you think, gosh, this is getting heavy. Don't worry, it gets heavier. Now, some of the descriptions in the scriptures, you think, maybe they're just making it up and just trying to scare us. And then, as you do with a lot of the scriptures, you come. There's some sort of realization sometimes happens in the heart, and you think, the Buddhas and the patriarchs, they did not lie. As a realization comes, that's something that happens. It's a phrase from a Zen tradition, because you sometimes think these guys are just pulling a fast one. They're just trying to scare me. but with some of the things seem so far-fetched, and then there's sometimes the realization comes, whew, they weren't lying. Because it is actually like that. Right? The possibility of a human birth is, the blind turtle that's swimming around in the ocean, around on the 7 oceans, and there's a wheel about the size of a tractor wheel, and once every 100 years, the blind turtle comes up to the surface. And how often do you think that how much time would you think would take for that blind turtle to come up through the middle of that tire floating in the ocean? And that's how precious and how rare a human birth is. Whoa. and then you recognize through your life and do a conscious human birth when you actually are fully, not just following instincts and just messing around in the animal realm or getting lost in some sort of other business, but actually, fully human and fully fulfilling your human potential. Anyway, I digress. There are other scary things as well, don't worry. But because the next one is the other thing that feeds us and feeds our sense of self, and we take so very personally, is volition, is the karma we make. And that's a type of food. And we act on good intentions and we act on bad intentions. All of this is food for our sense of, this is for me, this is mine, this is myself. And this is described as 2 strong people dragging you towards a burning, a place where the charcoal is burning, a pit, and the good and bad karma is dragging you towards this pit, and it's like you have to resist it, and that's the place, that's the food of karma. So really be careful of the karma you create, and any practice of the Eightfold Path is karma that leads to the end of karma. So practice the Eightfold Path because it's important. So and don't get dragged towards a charcoal pit that's burning. Can it get any heavier? The fourth one is the fourth nutriment is consciousness. Consciousness itself. And consciousness is that sense of I'm here, you're there, or this is here and this is there. A sense of both joining and separating, which is what consciousness does. It both joins and separates. As I mentioned on the retreat, like the strait between Singapore and Malaysia, Johor, it both joins and separates. Yeah? If I'm in England, I talk about the Channel. If I'm in Portugal, I talk about the border between Portugal and Spain. It both joins and separates, and consciousness is like that. It both joins and separates. And, isn't it? If you're conscious of some body, there's a sense of, there you are. But there's also the sense of separation that comes with it. And it's a powerful thing. And it is what makes things present for us. Consciousness is what makes things present for us. And this is like being stabbed by 100 swords in the morning, 100 swords at midday, and 100 swords in the evening. And again, you can, the pain of this both joining and separation. Because when we do have this consciousness of something, there's a whole added sort of story that goes behind it that somehow has to be sustained and somehow has to be maintained and remembered, and all the sorts of feelings about I'm here, you're there, do you like me, do you not like me, how am I getting on with this? All of this is being stabbed by stuff that is just, and the feelings that go with it. So you've got the flies that are coming around on the skinless cattle, and the whole bit of it, and getting dragged towards a burning pit. Give yourself a sense of urgency about it, to find a place of coolness where you don't take it all too personally, where it's just Dhamma. And the encouragement here is to practice. Sorry, it's a bit heavy, but I feel that it's worth mentioning these things sometimes, because it is precious, this human birth. It's extraordinarily precious. And, being willing to train oneself, being willing to admit mistakes, being willing to start again, being willing to feel that there is something to be done, that I can do it. The willingness to not take the whole thing too personally. If I am somebody, I need to do something, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing or if I can do it, which is the thinking process of personality belief, trying to find a right and ritual or the right thing to do. And then what comes with that is doubt, because you're never quite sure if it's going to be the right thing or not, or if you can do it, because it's the nature of the sense of separation. And then you think, well, how can I get rid of this? So then you've got to find the right technique to get rid of the technique. So it just gets it one more sense of complication further. So just the whole thing is just not personal, it's just what it is. So this human life, have the rebirth as a human being, have a consciousness that there's an intention to keep the 5 precepts. And that's a human birth already. An awareness of the possibility to train using the 5 precepts, because that's what makes human society possible. Otherwise you're living in an animal society or a demon society. But if you can live in a human and be aware of that possibility and the generosity of keeping the 5 precepts, the generosity of the intention not to indulge, not to harm, not to exploit. The intention to keep practicing. This is something you can do, and then you will conquer 1,000 people in hand-to-hand conduct, hand-to-hand combat, and that's the possibility of entering the training as a human being. You know, the simile for entering the stream is as difficult as combating 1,000 people in hand-to-hand combat. And it's hard work, but you can do it. I would really encourage you, if you've come across the Buddha's teaching, to allow the possibility that this is something that this human form can do. It can go through all the trials and tribulations of the whole thing that happens, and being careful in what you consume, what the food you eat, being careful in how you respond to the Vedana, being careful in your volition, and being careful of your consciousness, as to guard and support awakening. So if I've depressed you enough this evening, let's see if I can cheer you up with some of your questions. Thank you. Sorry if it's been a bit heavy, but I do feel it's both.
Brothers and sisters, if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hands and I'll give you the mic.
Dharma sharing. If you need the microphone, please ask for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the topic is pretty heavy though. Just a comment, Venerable Ajahn. You look at the number of beings. As we understand it, there are about 5 levels, from the heavens right up to the humans, and then the spiritual or ghost realm, and the animal, and the lowest, the hell realm. I think it's like a pyramid.
Yes.
Now, I understand the human population just crossed 8 billion.
Just what?
8 billion.
8 million. Oh,
Billion.
Where did they all come from?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the old question.
Yeah, I remember in the early days, I think in the 1910, 20, the time was only about probably 5,
Yes.
6, and then it reached just a span of maybe 60, 80 years.
Yes.
From about 4, 5 billion right up now, it's about almost 8 billion.
Yes. Where have they all come from?
Where do they come from? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you remember what the Buddha said, to be born is so rare, like the turtle from
How come we've got 8 billion now?
8 billion. That's a lot of.
And that's it's a question that's been asked, of course, many times. Yeah. And I think it was asked of a Tibetan at one point. And he was in America, and he said, "Where do you think all the buffalo have gone?" No, because and what is a true human birth? This human body is one thing, but a human birth is a different thing, I feel. What we can say is that the capacity of this form is actually incredibly good for bringing blessings and creating happiness. If it works well, humans are amazing at bringing happiness. Absolutely stunningly better than any other form. So, okay, there are 8 billion, but there are 8 billion opportunities for generating happiness. And nowadays, and we don't know how it's going to go. The levels of communication are so much greater, And the levels of connectedness are so much greater. And how that's going to affect us all and the next generations, we just don't know. I mean, we talk about this being a Dharma ending age sometimes, but actually it's a Dharma sharing age, because you can have the whole Tripitaka on your phone, can't you? You don't need to listen to me. You've got 24 hours of talks that you can listen to in whatever language you really want nowadays, practically. If you can understand English, you're great, but there's also in Chinese, there's also in Sinhala. There is so much Dhamma nowadays. And there's so much discussion of the Dhamma. You've got Sutta Central, which is an amazing resource. And that's just a click away. Just an unlock away. And you've got so much more than, when I first came across it in 75, if you had one Dhamma book, wow, that's amazing. You have one little cassette tape. Oh, pass it round. Listen to this. Nowadays, bing, anybody across the planet can now access Sutta Central if they just haven't, with that funny, what is it, Starlink or something, or whatever it is that controls drones over wherever they are. The tools are there for amazing blessings. Amazing blessings, and things are not hidden so easily. But when we used to hear the news, you can remember newspapers. Who reads a newspaper nowadays? When was the last time you opened a newspaper? Paper newspaper? Ah, yeah. Can't remember. Yeah, and the information. Whereas you can remember opening newspapers, waiting for the Sunday papers, yeah, or with the comics in them. Yeah. Nowadays, how many comics do you want? The capacity for happiness and for wisdom is so much greater. Yes, the population has doubled or trebled since I was in 50s, but the possibility for communication is amazingly so much greater. I used to communicate with my mother every day on FaceTime. Now for years, and that, wow, used to cost what? How much money for a phone call in the 70s for 1 minute? How many ringgit? Oh, send a telegram. Whoa, expensive, don't count the words. Nowadays, chat for hours on WhatsApp. Yeah? And so I'm not worried by the population, and I'm not worried about where it came from, because it's just how causes and conditions were. Maybe maybe beings have come out of the hell realms because of the possibility of awakening. Maybe beings have come out of the animal realms. Maybe beings have come down from the Deva realms to help us. And certainly for the last 2,500 years, people have been saying, may all beings be well and happy. Because they've been chanting the Metta Sutta. You've been chanting the Metta Sutta. So if you ever think that nobody loves you, remember all those people who've chanted the Metta Sutta. May all beings be well and happy. That includes you. Wherever you are, people have wished you well. Whatever you're doing when you're stuck in traffic, There are people wishing you well because they're chanting the Metta Sutta. Oh, I'm stuck in traffic, nobody loves me, why am I in traffic? People are chanting the Metta Sutta and saying, may all beings be well. And you know that nowadays, in ways that you couldn't know it years ago, because you'd have been stuck in the middle of nowhere. Where is this place? How did I get here? Why did my parents come to this place? Where's the Dhamma? Because that's what your grandparents and great-grandparents would have thought when they came to this little muddy place in the middle of nowhere, you know, not able to communicate with their friends, having left their ancestors behind. So sad and so worried and scared because they couldn't figure out how to live where they were living. They got in tiny little boats that were sank and were smelly and rubbishy and didn't have air conditioning. Can you remember cars without air conditioning? I can. Yeah. You know, humans' capacity to make happiness is amazing. And being able to share it. I mean, there's also an awful lot of pain and horribleness around, but you know, we wish all the beings in China and in India, we wish that they were enlightened. Partly because we're selfish and we'd like to make our lives easier, but partly because it's what we can do. You know, I wish you were all enlightened because it would make my life easier. That's my selfish bodhisattva vow. Does that help a bit?
Yeah. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Any other questions?
And you wish you wish that I was enlightened so that would make your teachings, my teachings better. So thank you for wishing me enlightened.
Any other further comments or questions? No? All are very happy, yeah. Okay. So shall we?
I'm sorry if it's a bit confusing what I'm saying, but I hope that it helps. You know, the intention is to try to set some structures, some thoughts. A thought is a structure, and some ways of thinking, trying to follow the Lord Buddha's teaching as best I can, giving just enough so that there can be less suffering in the world now and in the future, because that's what the Lord Buddha was so skillful, and we have so much gratitude, at least I do, for that.
All right.
Yes, another question.
Question from the young man over there. Come. Yeah.
Hello, Venerable Ajahn. I'm Brian. We've met last week.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a question, and I'll try to phrase everything in like one thought. Okay. So just now you mentioned about like maybe in the 70s you have like a cassette of about the Dharma talk, and you really appreciate the cassette, like the thought that was put into the cassette, but now there's like over information. So back then you really appreciate it and you really absorb the Dharma and really put it into practice. But now because of maybe over information, there's just too much information, and sometimes you just listen from the left ear in and then your right ear out. So my question is like, how should we know how to use the things we have and like in a way that can maximize our own benefit?
The question that I feel that you're asking is, you have access to so much. You wonder how to make best use of the opportunities, and you have a little bit of what's called option paralysis. Yes? Option paralysis. and the sense of too much on your plate and you don't know what to eat, and the sense of being overwhelmed, and that almost puts you into a sense of not wanting to do anything and paralyzes you. I've mentioned before that the way of testing your spiritual life is seeing how you are with other people and with yourself. Are blessings growing in your life for yourself and other people? If you do pick up a particular technique, then, and if you find that it has some resonance with you, then do it for at least 3 months, so that you have some skill in it. Some things you'll continue to do all your life, and people are different. But for me, Anapanasati is something that I've continued to use. And some people will do some exercises all their life. Will do the same Tai Chi or Qigong exercises throughout their life. They'll pick it up, and then that'll be something that they just do, maybe for 20, 25 years, and it'll just be a way that they are. And yes, there's almost too much to do. So you will have to just decide. Talk with your friends, and share and be a good friend to people, and see how it works out over a few weeks, and then if you do pick up something, keep it going for 3 months, and then see if you want to do something else, or if you want to keep it going for the rest of your life. There's some traditions say you should only read and study this tradition, and they'll throw out all the books from all other traditions and say you shouldn't study that. I feel that what you need to study is this one. Where are your impulses coming from? How is the citta? What is the tone of where you are? There's that book out there, the Gifts He Left Behind. It's out there, and Ajahn, and he's just a few pithy phrases. And one of the things is that the heart going outwards is the cause of suffering, and the result of the heart going outwards is suffering. The heart, knowing the heart, chit henjit, knowing the heart, is practicing the path, and the result of this is the end is nirodha, is the end of extra suffering. So you've got something you can work with. Whatever you decide to pick up, whatever teaching you decide to have a look at, whatever practice you decide to do, whether you decide to run for 24 hours or whether you decide to just do short bursts of exercises, look at what's the result is, and look at where the heart is coming from. The citta, look at the tone of where you are, and keep your attention on that. That's my suggestion. And don't worry about it too much. It's all, everything is teaching you. Everything is possible. You can learn from anything. Everything is teaching the Dhamma because it all has the same characteristics. It arises and ceases. And all the different reminders, just be grateful for them. All the different possibilities, have a sense of gratitude for them. Good luck in this endless, aimless wandering.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. So could I say that to summarize what you said just now was to just know the heart?
Know the jitta, jit hen jit. Know and see where you're coming from.
Could you explain the term citta a bit?
Citta, well, there's three things. There's citta, mano, and vijnana. That's sometimes translated as consciousness. And citta is it's like the tone of what's happening. It's not the intention, and it's not the consciousness. Is the citta angry or confused or bright or light? What's it like before there are words? What's the sense of being here like before there are words? Before there are words, what is the sense of being here? What's not thinking? And if you can, if there's if you turn that to that attention, it's not that I'm not thinking, because if there's a sense of I, then there's thinking. So it's that sort of examination that'll keep the thing. It's the hardest practice. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, let us show our gratitude and appreciation to Venerable Ajahn by saying sadhu 3 times together. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.